Hello, everyone. Let me see where are my speakers. There is Gabriel and then James. How is everyone doing today? Happy Thursday. The week is almost over. We still have a few months to go. Um, and while I do my quick intro here, I want to ask our audience to go into the chat and tell us where you're calling from while I do my icebreaker here with my amazing speakers. So we have Gabriel and James in here. We were talking backstage. 4th of July is coming up. Everyone has plans. And I want to ask Gabriel first. Are hot dog sandwiches?
Our hot dog sandwiches. Well, I am a huge hot dog fan,
Hmm.
but I would have to say they're not sandwiches. I think that they're their own category of edibles.
That's fair. How do you eat your hot dogs? Ketchup and mustard, and that's it?
I'm everything. I'm just put it
Okay,
just all the way is what they call it at my hot dog stand here.
that's cool. What about you, James? What do you think? Are hot dog sandwiches?
I'm with Gabe on this. It's its own unique. It's a unicorn among foods.
Well,
Sort of like all these companies listening in. I'm sure there's some unicorns out there, right? So yeah, no, it's its own category and Chicago style. So
There you go.
that makes sense. I do believe they are sandwiches, but I'm not going to disagree with my speakers right now.
all
So
right, we're all unique.
we have people from all over. We have people from Ukraine, Boston, Idaho, Chicago. Wow, everyone from everywhere in the world. Welcome. We love having you here. All right, so let's start. We're here today to talk about inbound lead quality with this amazing panelists that you just met. We're so excited about the content and takeaways that you audience will take from this event. And just keep the locations coming. We have people from Pittsburgh. I love to see where you are, audience, because you're the best part of MSP. And today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Bros. For those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there. We have 35K members. So with that amount of people, I am pretty sure no questions will be left unanswered and no problems will be left unsolved. And the way we help people solve their problems in sales is through live sessions like this one. We also host in-person events. We have one today in New York City. We have a robust online forum, and we have quarterly summits. And we have one coming up. So on July 18 and 19, 2023, we are hosting Camp Modern Sales, the biggest virtual sales excellence summit. We are going to host more than 15 webinars. We will have more than 3,000 sales nerds online watching the webinars. We have more than 35 high caliber speakers. You can hear from sales leaders at Sales Loft, Outreach, Gainsight, Stage 2 Capital, Sales Intel will be there, and so much more. Um, this this webinar here today is brought to you also by our partner SalesIntel. James will tell us a little bit about SalesIntel later, but let's focus on this session here. This session is being recorded, so you will be able to access the recording right after this panel is done. So you're not gonna miss anything if you don't pay too much attention, but I do recommend you to pay a lot of attention because the content is amazing. And also, we have a Q&A panel right here. Go ahead and send all your questions to our speakers. You can also use the chat to send questions. We'll get to the questions during the event. And finally, we have 5 polls scheduled for today. And the way to answer them, you're going to see a red dot over the poll word right there in your right-hand side panel. And then you just go and select your answer, and we will share the result with the speakers once we're done, and they will discuss the results. So please use the polls, and please have a lot of fun and pay attention to what the speakers have to say because it's amazing. But that's enough for me. I'm going to pass the mic to James. He's going to be our moderator for today. James, you can take it from here. I'm going to be listening and taking notes because I'm very interested about this topic.
Great. Hey, thanks Eduardo, and thanks to Gabe for joining, who we'll introduce in just a moment. But good to be here again with the MSP community. We at Sales Intel love working with this group, and we've been here quite frequently. So I really appreciate those of you that are returning for another webinar with us, and it's good to be here. So as Eduardo mentioned, struggling with lead quality, question mark, probably rhetorical. The answer is probably yes. I think we all in some way, shape or form in any part of a go-to-market team are going to feel the struggles, right, of this issue. So what we're going to do, myself and Gabe, we'll introduce each other in just a moment, have a little moment of Zen, talk about the problem, and then get into 5 tips that I think I've seen as a CMO over the years with 10 plus different companies now, be good ways to handle this issue in a productive, constructive way to make progress. And then Gabe is, an excellent, like in the guts of things, expert who can really talk about what it means to a BDR SDR function when you do or don't have these conversations productively. And I think that's why I wanted to invite him in. I've worked with Gabe and Alleyoop as a CMO at other companies. They're now a partner, a customer, and a partner. I'll emphasis on partner. And so this is a really great start of that partnership with the Alleyoop team. So without further ado, we'll jump in and just have a moment of Zen. This is a face. If you have children, you've seen this face. If you don't have children, you've still seen this face. Gabe, have you ever made this face in talking with a customer about their lead quality? Okay.
100%.
So, yeah. And it always ends up on 2 dimensions, right? It's always about either one, you're sending me too many crappy leads and wasting my time. How am I supposed to hit quota? Or you ratchet down quality and you qualify like crazy, and then the pendulum swings and the quality complaint becomes, you're not sending me enough leads. Now I have to outbound inefficiently to cold prospects. How am I supposed to hit quota? So, and that brings us to our first poll, Eduardo, as we get in, and I'll have people fill this out while we make formal introductions of ourselves. But how often does your team debate lead quality, right? And I've got sort of 4 levels of pain. Endlessly. It feels like it's all we ever talk about. Frequently, it distracts us from being a stronger go-to-market team. Occasionally, but not so bad. And this last one, I would love to see who answers this, but maybe there's someone out there. It'll be a unicorn. Never. We have a clear, quantified, data-defined definition of lead quality. So you've heard from me, but just to introduce myself, I'm the CMO over here at SalesIntel. At SalesIntel, we are a B2B go-to-market intelligence provider. Fundamentally, we help your go-to-market team target the right accounts, target your ICP. We then surface prospects that are in market currently, which makes you a lot more efficient. We then can provide you the contact data to help you go out and win that business. And finally, when you have any gaps at all in the intelligence you need, which you will from any provider in this space, one of our superpowers is to provide human verified research on demand service to help you go fill those gaps. So that's a bit about me. Gabe, thanks for joining us. Tell us a little bit about Alleyoop.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, James and Eduardo. Thank you to the MSP family for allowing me to jump in here. And of course, to SalesIntel, phenomenal partnership with you over the years, but now, of course, here at SalesIntel. So my name is Gabe. CEO at Alleyoop. Alleyoop is a leader in sales development as an agency. Been in business for 15 years. We started actually in Buffalo, New York, which is where I reside today, but we have grown to a multinational business, fully remote team, which allows us to source best-in-class SDRs without geographical constraints. What we focused on in the beginning stages of our business is really, SaaS and tech companies, because that's where the SDR role really was born. But now we have evolved into all different verticals, all different industries, because more and more companies are adapting the SDR function, and we fulfill the needs that small startups are looking for. I mean, you could be a 2 to 3 person company and have zero sales development experience, and we can build the entire function for you from scratch and lead it. And we also work with multi-billion-dollar companies that are looking to augment, scale, or run A/B testing against their current teams. So we have worked with, I think we staffed over 2,000 SDRs to date. and on top of that, hundreds and hundreds of clients from all different types of size. So that's just a little bit about us and our brag book.
Yeah, I love it. And 2,000 data points to bring to the conversation about lead quality. I love that. So Eduardo, I don't know if we've got enough data to show that first poll as we head into our first tip, but that would be kind of fun. But all right, yeah. So this, I think, is what we've seen. You sort of have 85% at some level of pain. If you're in that 15% on that third row, the occasionally that's creeping up a little bit toward more like 80, 85, 90%. I think you're doing well, to be honest. I think if you ever fully get rid of this pain, which no one does, you're probably not challenging yourself enough, right? I don't know, Gabe, how you feel about these answers, but makes sense to me, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. I was expecting, either endlessly or frequently to be the top two, and it looks like it is. So I totally agree with this.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll jump back in now, and we'll start with the first thing here. Which, look, if you've heard SalesIntel talk before, you've heard me talk about this before, and I think the more we spend time in market, the more I realize how vitally important it is, and frankly, how I'm surprised at the number of companies I'm now encountering that assume they have this in place, but they actually really don't to the level of detail now available in this market. So number one tip is you need a clear, quantifiable definition of quality. That is, again, quantifiable with named companies and probably very specific titles at the persona level. That is probably the number one way to start to solve for this problem. And a lot of times you really dig in and ask yourself the hard question is, do we have this? You might not, right? So as we jump into this, I'm going to give you a little bit of insight and advice on how I've done this and how we often consult and work with our partners to get this done right. And then I'll hand it over to Gabe to talk about what this impact has when it's either present or not present. But so another quick poll, how would you best describe your sales and marketing team's definition of your ICP? Answer number one is, I should be leading this webinar. We have a quantifiable definition with every account and the relevant context in our CRM today, right? Number two is, it's fuzzy. We say we have a definition, but then we actually talk about it. Lots of debate breaks out about whether this particular contact or company is within the sweet spot of a quality lead. And then finally, no clue at all. We're going after anything that breathes, right? So those are kind of the three levels of definition and polling we'll answer here. And as we talk about this tip, I always want to start with TAM, SAM, SOM, because I think this concept is thrown around a lot of acronyms. And lots of times when we first encounter a company, when they tell us that they've got a clear, quantified, measurable definition of quality lead, they're somewhere in the TAM, SAM arena. They haven't really gotten down to a really focused sweet spot, right? And so TAM is your total market. This is a great concept to use when you're raising money as like a founder, right? This is how big, this is, if I had all the product and all the resource in the world, this is what I could potentially go after in terms of market. Unless you're literally truly a multinational unicorn like a Google or Amazon, you're not in that world, right? None of us are. SAM becomes a little more realistic, right? Service addressable market. This is where, hey, I've got a product fit here, right? I know I can actually make customers happy in this area because my product meets their needs, right? SAM is even smaller, where this is service obtainable. This is the most realistic and most concise view of quality leads, because you actually have the people, they're trained, they're resourced, and maybe you're doing it cost effectively as well to meet that part of the market. So I always like to sort of educate around that and then give you a quick glimpse of, and then of course the second part of this, by the way, is the contact side. So we talk a lot about the account level. The other thing that I think often gets lost is, to what extent is your ICP and your quality lead definition well understood at a title contact level? So decision makers, influencers, and users are the three levels, the simple levels that I tend to recommend and use, right? Your decision makers are going to be the smallest group of people, the ultimate person you need to sign the contract. But there's going to be a select few of them, and they're not often going to walk in the front door, right? So making that the only way you define quality lead is going to make it, you're going to encounter that problem of, I don't have enough leads. Expanding out to influencers, that's much better. You're now getting a ring around that decision maker of people that really value what you do and have influence. And then users is always a question we ask, a discussion. Is your cost of sale, is your resourcing capable of bringing in users and managing them or not, right? Or do you need to have those users go to a marketing automation platform, or maybe handled through like a product-led growth type trial that's easy, right? So those are all the questions you need to think of. And before I turn it over to Gabe for some of his tips, this is what our quality lead definition looks like at SalesIntel, right? Just drinking your own champagne. I know there are 26,324 companies that perfectly fit the definition of a high quality lead. And when I'm in that spot, right, my win rates are 40+% higher. My ACVs are 50% plus higher. My retention rates are 50% higher. My 3-year LTV is 3 times higher, right? Why? They value our whole product. Cost-wise, it's a similar effort for me to go after these part of the market as it is to go after other parts of the market. And I've got more room to expand over time and drive NRR. So I really love to share with people how we've drunk our own champagne. So Gabe, let's talk to you a little bit. Like, tell us about what you've encountered in those 2,000 data points.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, let me just tell you a little bit of how we do it here, because, CEOs, founders, they come to us as startups and they want us to build an SDR function for them. And they're talking TAM. And to us, that sounds great for their investor meetings and to raise money and to, build their businesses. But from our point of view, that really doesn't do anything for us, because if we can't contact them and if we can't connect with them, and that isn't clearly defined as an approachable or attainable contact, then we really can't do anything. So, what we do here specifically is we have a full onboarding process where we take a look at the accounts, we take a look at those contacts, and we build out a actual data set for them. We focus on the playbook, we focus on each persona, we focus on the ICP, and we build out those content playbooks to address and communicate to those contacts specifically, to make sure that we're within the ICP. And we also make sure that it's signed off as well by the executive team. So we pull with you guys, SalesIntel, contacts to make sure that, hey, this is the litmus test, this is what we're going to go after. And if we can't contact them through a multi-channel approach, then we don't even take them on as a client, because it's just going to be failure. And that's how we approach it. And those are the tips that we're looking at when starting up with a new client.
Yeah, let me double click on a couple of quick things. One is, share, like, how do you get, these founders and the CEOs or the executive team broadly who's coming to you? How do you go about getting that sign off? Like, what's the process you've seen, and any difference in how you're able to perform when you've got the buy-in of the full go-to-market function versus when you don't?
Yeah, well, we share with them a contacts that we are going after. We do a litmus test on those contacts to determine connectability. And then once we determine an actual ratio of how we can contact them, we share those data points with the executive team, and that's where we get that sign off from. So we get the data, we contact the data, we showcase the results in a small segment, and then we get that buy-in. And then once we have that buy-in, it's all about execution at that point.
Yeah, got it. Cool. So number one, just to recap, it's about a account level definition. Within those accounts, the people and personas and a playbook among each, and then a test before you get sign off, right? And then as you go about starting to do your work, there's no dispute over what's quality, what's not. Everyone knows what we're doing and why. And then if you don't have the volume, you're going to maybe come back and expand things. Or if you've got too much volume and the efficiency is not where you need, you can tighten it up, right? So I think this is the game we play, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
And in addition to that sign-up process, we do what we call the first 10, right? So we book 10 meetings that we feel that are high quality leads with the exact information that our ICP is defined as. And then we showcase those 10 we review it with the executive team. And if those 10, they sign off on it and we feel comfortable with it, we use that really as the benchmark, right, to move forward with that campaign.
Yeah, and I remember this is a good point, because what you're able to do from those 10, because that 10 is a subset of, a numerator that's much bigger from the test, right? So what you're also now getting for the benefit of the quantified ICP is you'll know the number of companies, you'll know the number of contacts, roughly within that. You've got the test, and this is like such an important concept for everyone to really follow on this call. You then have a conversation and forecast. Look, like, this is what you can expect, right? These are what the numbers look like. This is the waterfall of the outreach, the connection, the successful meetings, So, now you've got like a shared understanding of even the volume people can expect, right? So I think that's a really, really important point, and I remember that part of the process and how valuable it is. Eduardo, what do we see in our poll results before we move to the next point? Yeah. So again, you've got.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, and I love we gotta get more people voting here. Come on, I know there's like over 100 of you out there, so no double tasking. No, cool. So let's jump into tip number 2, and this one is so modern lead scoring. Oh, sorry, I jumped too far ahead. My bad. Let me make sure it loads for a second. Number 2. What we refer to as modern lead scoring. So this is another area, and it logically cascades from having a tightly defined ICP or SOM. And as we talk about this, we'll go into the poll. But I want to ask everyone listening in, which of the following data sets do you use to score and route leads, right? So number 1 is the 20 plus year use of an MQL scoring algorithm, right? Marketing activity, opens, clicks, downloads, webinar attendance. Then we've got account firmographic data. So by that, I mean geography, vertical they're in, company size, things like that. Technographic data is the technology detail around an account, right? Are they using Salesforce CRM or something else? Are they using Marketo or HubSpot, right? Those are the things I care to know in our business. Contact data or intent data. So tell me which of those, and you can select multiple ones, but I would love to see what this looks like from this group. So I hope we get more response. But the key here is this: in modern lead scoring, and this is really truly enabled through B2B intelligence from SalesIntel and other providers, obviously. So I'm being authentic about that. But you should be thinking about your lead scoring moving from reactive to proactive. And I think that's the thing that is so vital about what we're trying to convey here. The old school marketing activity only model is you're waiting for things to happen. You're waiting it's almost a passive mode of trying to get people to respond. Super important, right? But it is fundamentally a reactive moment. There is three additional data points that I think we would recommend using, and they manifest in an account fit score, which is, again, going back to that ICP definition. What is the very specific firmographic and technographic definition you would put around a quality lead? And you might have varying degrees of it with a score that's different, right? Someone's the perfect company size with the perfect shaped team, but maybe they're using a technology that's not a perfect fit for you, right? So that's the kind of what I mean by account fit score. And then equally important is an intent score. An intent score can come from multiple types of intent signals. It's a whole different topic, but these are the 3 or 4 lead types. And then what you end up being able to do is move much more proactively. So for example, if I see an intent signal in an ICP account that's not responding at all to any of my MQL activity, I'm going to aggressively hand it to Alleyoop, for example. and Gabe's team with that score, with that, and be like, look, this messaging, this playbook, run it. This is a perfect contact. It's showing intent. We think there's an opportunity, right?
It looks like James had a little issue with his connection. Are you there, Gabe?
Yeah, I'm here now. Can you hear me? I cut out for me as well.
Yes, so James had a little issue with his connection. I think he'll be back soon. Audience, I'm gonna ask you to go and ask any questions that you have in the chat while we wait for James to come back. I think he will be back soon. Gabe, do you have anything to add?
Back.
Oh, there we go. There he is.
There you go.
I'm sorry about that.
Thought I was
Oh,
gonna,
no worries.
I thought I was gonna have to be James for a moment there.
Yeah. All right, Gabe. I'm sorry about that. I made it back pretty quick. I had a backup.
All right.
Procedure. Gotta love
That's
it.
good.
So hopefully this is making sense. And then again, to bring it to life before I hand it to Gabe, right? It's so empowering, not just to how we manage lead quality, define it, but how you resource against it, right? Because your cost of sale in a world like we're in, competitive world like we're in, has got to be considered. And so in our case, if it's in that sweet spot, right in our ICP, great. It's a gold star lead, and I'm going to go after it in multiple ways. Up market, right, to larger enterprise companies, they're opportunistic. I may not be able to compete as well as I can in that green, but there's plenty of opportunity there that I want to send to probably my best AEs because they're capable of closing a multi-billion dollar enterprise deal, right? Where we may be like an add-on to a Zoom Info, right? Down in the small, tiny companies, I'm talking about SalesIntel, right? We'll take that opportunistically, but we have to proceed with caution. We could spend a lot of time and money and never get the deal, or end up with a customer that's likely to churn every year because the sales team, the one salesperson they have changes. So that's a good example of how we're able to operate, right, very effectively in our world. So Gabe, this is a fun one. Talk to me about your pro tips when it comes to, I guess modern lead scoring, right?
Yeah. So lead scoring for us is so important, especially within the SDR function. It kind of goes without saying, but we need to make sure that we're monitoring three important things. First thing is we call them buying centers. Some people call it multi-threading. Essentially what we're looking for is a group of buyers who are the influencers, like we talked about in the previous slide. Those titles that we're going after in the influential in the decision. So we want to talk to the VPs, the directors, maybe all the way down to the users, depending on how we want to approach it. But the first thing we're doing when it comes to scoring is determining where they fall within that buying center, that buying group, and who's making those decisions. Because as an SDR, we want to target and penetrate those different titles and those different people. And we need that scoring to determine who are the right people we're going to be able to contact within that group and that cluster. The other piece, as you were mentioning before, James, right, the complete ICP, the account fit. This is huge for us. We don't just look at personas, right? We look at the full ICP. And, if it doesn't fit within the ICP, the client doesn't want that meeting on their calendar. So we need to make sure that we're scoring that lead correctly to determine whether or not it's even worth it for us to contact them. And then, of course, send them over to a client as a booked meeting. And then establishing, qualifying questions. This is huge. We work with our clients to determine what those qualifying questions are before we even go live. And if we can check off a majority of those questions up front, then of course we consider that a qualified meeting and we can send it over. But that's how we score it. And we make sure that conversation, that lead, that prospect is scored that way from an SDR's perspective before we can consider it a booked meeting. Another thing to think about when it comes to qualifying questions is, a lot of people use BANT. I just did a blog on my LinkedIn a few weeks ago about this. For an SDR role, we don't want to get deep into the weeds with BANT, right? We don't want to talk about budget. Maybe we do, but most of the time we don't. We want to really ask specific questions that are relevant to the client's discovery call and not, weed out those prospects before they get to the dance, if that makes sense. So these are just 3 tips that we look at when it comes to scoring the leads when it's in our world.
Yeah. And so maybe Eduardo, show the results of the quiz here, the polling. Sorry, I think it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, okay. This is what so this is great, really interesting to see. And scroll a little bit down on the screen. I can't quite see the intent data there, Eduardo. Yeah, so you've got a lot of emphasis on MQL and contacts, and that and this is what we see so often. I don't know, Eduardo, if you're able to scroll down to see maybe not the intent data. It's below the fold on my screen. Anyway, I guess we'll move on. But yeah, going
looks
back,
like it's 6 votes. I can see it on our side, on the other side of it. So it looks like there's 6 votes for intent data,
14%,
10 for contact, yeah, and then the highest of which is the MQLs.
Yeah. So this makes sense. We can jump back into the presentation and on slide 21 here. The data supports it. What I see, just to put a point on this, everyone, what I see so often is a horizontal definition of your ICP at the contact and persona level, and then you use an MQL. And that is really where you start to lose efficiency and lead quality starts to diminish. And because it's ignoring the fact that these people work for a company, and that company ultimately has a need that the CFO cares about, right? And so if you're going horizontal, you're getting way outside of your what we call product market fit potentially, and that's where things break down. So anyway, it's a really, really good to see the poll support sort of what we're observing anecdotally. So good. So let's move on to number 3. We'll move a little quicker. These get a little tighter in the conversation as we move down. This is a nuanced one, and one that I think often really excites marketers and helps expectation set with your sales partner, which is this notion of building brand versus harvesting demand and sort of the role of intent. And it's about top funnel, mid funnel. And the point is this: when you look at, and again, I'll use our own market data. When you look at, when you properly leverage intent data, right, at scale, which is something we're capable now of doing as an industry, especially if you work with us. I know that $792 million market, SAM or ICP, SOM or ICP that I see today, I know what 15% are in market right now from all these intent signals. It's about $135 million in that market. My first and most important motion as a marketer, whether it's my paid ad targeting or my outbound prospecting, right, my account-based everything, should constantly be rolling through, surfacing those 15%. And the effectiveness of your work will radically jump when you're able to do that, when you're able to operationally get this done. Now, if you cannot, right, and this is the point I'll make, if you cannot, then it's okay to build brand. And I feel like a quality lead that's in the ICP, that's the perfect persona, if they come in outside of those intent areas, it's a great quality lead. And so often you as a marketer or an SDR team, Gabe, do your job and get a great contract for a company that's 6 or 9 months away from being in the buy cycle. That's a quality lead. So the whole point of this conversation is don't confuse deal timing with lead quality. And that happens so often. Sales complains, these guys aren't in the market yet. Well, it's a decision maker in the ICP. They're not totally happy. Their contract comes up in 6 months. So, we'll talk about this because this is such an important one. But here you can see examples of creative that are different, right? When I know I'm targeting in market versus when I know I'm just building brand. When I'm building brand, top of funnel, I want you all to show up for this webinar, right? I'm top of funnel, I'm building brand. But when I see you're in market, I'm going to hit you with an offer, unlimited credits, unlimited, So that's the whole point here. So Gabe, have fun with this one because this is one we see a lot. I skipped over the poll, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, just because it's a 7 and 9 month, lead time in them closing the deal doesn't mean it's not a lead. It very much is a lead. But I think we have to look at it even more granularly, like where does that lead stay and live? From an SDR's perspective, and I know there's a lot of companies out there that don't have an SDR function. They're still running, AEs or doing all the prospecting. And while that is okay, the problem you have is that account executives are focusing on closing deals every month. And to your point, like they want to know like who are the contacts, who are the leads that we can close now, and the ones that are not closable now usually fall by the wayside, fall through the cracks, and don't have the account executive's attention. But in the SDR role, that is exactly the attention it needs, is the right person, and that's what the SDRs are for, right? So when it comes to SDR responsibility, their responsibility is to determine where those leads are within the buying cycle and put them in front of the AEs at the right time, and not put them in front of their AEs at the right time as well, right? And so that's super important here, and that's why SDRs, and the AE partnership really works. And the other side of it is, like I said before, timing is everything. So creating the right messages, putting them in the right sequencing from a sales development perspective, based on that timing and based on that intent from the timing is super important here.
Yeah. And I think this is an area where I've seen in terms of our customers, depending on your sophistication of your like marketing automation, your ops layer, there's a lot of different ways to handle that timing issue, right? It could be parked back in marketing from like a marketing automation perspective with a signal, an operational signal to the BDR that we're 90 days or 60 days out from the sales cycle starting, hand it back to the BDR or SDR, right? Or
exactly.
if you're earlier in your development process, right? And I think you probably have a lot of customers in this boat, Gabe, then trust your BDR SDR expert to manage that timing, right? Until you get the sophistication in your ops layer to do it in a more scalable way, right? But when you hand it too quickly to the AE, it can frustrate the buyer, ultimately the lead, and it's also a cost issue, right? You want your sales team closing deals, and so it can drive inefficiency. So, all right, cool stuff. So we'll go to number 4, and this gets relatively, again, it's all sort of starting to stack on each other. It's measure only what's real. So let me throw the poll up on this one, because I think this is an important one. And this is all about reporting and alignment on reporting, and how aligned is your team when it comes to reporting? And there's three views of this. One is we're not aligned at all. Everyone has a different view of the numbers. This is a big one. Sales comes to the meeting with one set of numbers. The COO or CFO or whoever comes with a financial set of numbers, and marketing comes with another set of numbers. And we've all been there. Somewhat aligned, depends on the day, the meeting, and who was involved. Maybe we agree, maybe we don't. And then 100% aligned. We never debate the numbers, just what we need to do to get better. So be curious about this particular issue. But the point is this: when you go through and you've done the first 3 steps of this process clearly and articulately, and you've done the testing that Gabe described, and you know the market size, and you can set KPIs and goals according to that and track, are we above or behind, what's going on? Now all your conversations become about being more productive and working together, right? And there'll be lots of problems that you want to solve for. Like, no company is going to get through this perfectly, I don't think. But it becomes a productive conversation, not a conversation about what is actually happening because we have different data or different definitions of success. Seems super obvious, but if you don't take the steps earlier on to do this well, by the time you get to having a conversation, it's going to be a mess. So, measuring what matters, right? So I joined, late August, September last year. We drank our own champagne, applied this definition, right? And so now on my reporting, when I'm talking to the CFO and the CEO, is very, very clear. It's ICP inbound leads. I'll get leads outside of it opportunistically. I'm in marketing. But what I'm my KPIs are against getting the right leads in the door, the ones that really are going to appreciate us the most and have all of that goodness financially, right? And then also seeing that the cost basis is dropping and wanting to see the inbound pipeline contribution as a result growing. But the key is I've zeroed in on the ICP, lead quality definition, to do my reporting. And here's another example of of the reality. So my overall composition hasn't changed. That's what's important. I'm opportunistic. I'm getting lots of people to come in, but the way I'm handling that lead from a quality management perspective and who gets what leads and how much effort we put against them creates a lot more efficiency in my organization. This is how you start to grow the company successfully in a financially healthy way. So hopefully this is making sense, but and I know you experience this a lot, Gabe, so have at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to, look at the actual lead himself. Like right now is SDRs, phone is still king, but we do run a multi-channel approach. And, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's email, video, Vidyard, phone calls, smoke signals. We've tried that once, but it didn't work very often. But the actual thing we have to focus on is this multi-channel approach and making sure that we are connecting and reviewing the data on what is working and what isn't working. And we adjust and we pivot and we double down on what's working, because we know every persona is a little bit different. Some people are picking up phone calls, some people are responding to emails. So we want to test what that ICP is responding to, and then making sure that only contacts with that quality data is who we're going after. And we do this with review sessions with our clients. So we make sure that the AEs and the SDR teams are communicating on a daily basis. So we're actually taking a look at every single meeting after the fact to determine whether or not, one, that's a good lead, and how we actually got that lead, and report to it as well, so we can continually bring in more contacts within our ICP, but within our ICP that has the right channel that we want to approach.
Yeah. Hey, Eduardo, what did our poll say on this one? I'm curious. I've run this one before, and yeah, again, you get that 70, 80%, so that's good that so many of you have got, a good number of you have got sort of that alignment. That's so much more achievable with the way we're operationally run and with the data we've got. Before you go into doing the work, that alignment is up front. And then it just becomes a very productive conversation. Hard conversations maybe, but not about the data, about what the team needs to do or what's working and why. So cool. All right, we can jump back to the last piece here. This is sort of just putting a punctuation, frankly, Gabe, on what we talked about, which is, and what I try to emphasize is pipeline generation is a team sport, right? And really the goal here is that this isn't a blame game, right? And I think if you take these steps, the blame game goes away, and you end up with an approach that I call the demand center, which I really emphasize. If you do all this at the end of the day, you gotta then bring the people that can influence positive change and what you're doing together routinely, not just sales and marketing. In the case of SalesIntel and how I recommend to customers, it's, you've got deal desk in sales, right? The RevOps team, marketing, the BDR leadership team, right? Even, even sometimes, I'll have the CEO and our COO in these at least every couple weeks, right? And that's a way for us to constantly interrogate what we're doing. We've got the data around it. We know what quality lead means, and we just get better. So we'll close out here on this one.
Yeah, I called quality data really the glue, right? The glue that keeps it all together, because you got a RevOps team who's happy, right? You have marketing who's happy. You have sales development who's happy, and that's really where you want everyone to be. And the data is the glue to make that happen. Many years ago, the reason why we started as companies, we saw a huge, like you said in the beginning of our call, marketing was fighting with sales and sales was fighting with marketing. They're throwing arrows over the wall, and there was no one was happy. And I think the SDR function, just to toot our own horn a little bit, was really a smarketing approach, right? To come in and be that go-between between the two divisions, and really started bringing that glue and bringing that cohesiveness together as one team. But the data really is what keeps everyone happy and growing in the right direction. So, that's where we can start setting goals. That's where we can start focusing on, effective communication and collaborating. Once the data is figured out, that then, people, like I said, it's all about hitting those goals and crushing everyone's metrics.
Yeah. And I will say, for the marketers listening in, and for those of you who may not, I know with Gabe's expertise, right, we talked a lot about it from a BDR, SDR perspective. But for those marketers listening in, right, going back through this, think about what you're now capable of, executing with this data when you have a paid spend, right? So, for example, that 15% where we see intent, my messaging is so tightly defined, I can afford to hit that entire market and break through. That's another reason you don't drive the inbound leads at the quality and scale you want, is because you end up without that tight data-driven definition that Gabe emphasized. You end up, kind of spreading out your spend and your awareness build in a way that, frankly, you don't break through, right? And that's especially true for sales intel in our market. It's a very competitive place we live in, right? So I know where I'm a good fit. That's the group I got to get their share of voice. I want to have 5 or 6 or 7 display ads that they see, and I can afford to do that, and I get the ROI from that. I don't get it if I try to go after, my TAM with my spend.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that the marketers understand the benefits of all this in their world, their specific world. So really cool. I think we're going to go to Q&A for the last 13 minutes. We produce a ton of content in Sales Intel. I really encourage you to take a look. We've got a buyer's guide for sales intelligence. We talk about the ICP process. We partner with what's called GTM partners. You'll meet them, and you've heard from them before. And then I always appreciate MSP allowing us to make an offer. And many times we will do this in partnership with Alleyoop if you need a BDR, SDR function as part of your execution. So that's for sure part of the offer. But for those of you that aren't aware, we're revolutionizing our pricing, unlimited credits, right? And this is a radical way to go about, because everything I just described in this discussion with Gabe requires a lot of data. And if you're being charged every time you peel off a credit, it doesn't work for the efficiency you need. So we're really trying to completely revolutionize how it is that B2B intelligence is priced and managed. So enjoy that opportunity, and we'll get back to Q&A and sign off here in a few minutes. I don't know, Eduardo, if we have any questions, but
Awesome. Yes, we do have some questions. Let me share here. So Terry is asking, our team has defined ICPs on a contract title level, but our outbound strategy is struggling because we haven't defined what the companies who are buying have in common. The companies who buy our product fall within a huge range of budget, industry, and size. How can we find and analyze that data so that we can better focus on our outbound?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at this, and then Gabe, you can add on. Like, this is always the initial starting point for trying to solve the problem. And it really, if you're brand new to the market, you may have to have a clear hypothesis, right? And what you think the real sweet spot is and why. But ideally, you've got enough data in your CRM, which in the case of Sales Intel we did, and I just analyzed all of our data on 5 viewpoints, right? I had every closed won deal, I had every closed lost deal, and I had every deal that churned, expanded, or retained. So I have those 5 segments in my business. And I layered on all that firmographic and technographic data that we possess and that you probably possess in some way too. And then when you do that, you're able to analyze it and figure out from that broad market of information, where are you really getting slightly higher win rates? Where is your ACV a little bit higher? Where is your retention a little bit stronger? Unless you're very rare situation, there's going to be some spikes in that data that show you like, okay, there's really a couple dimensions that when we dial it in with the data, we get to a market size where if this is the market we're hitting, we're going to perform 30% better. And you've given yourself focus so that you can advertise and market and outbound to it cost efficiently. So it's all about analyzing your own CRM data on those segments I just described. And that is written about in the white paper I flashed you, how we go about doing that. You need the data. I'm not going to lie to you there. You can't do it with just a little bit of geo information. You need enough nuanced data to find those pockets. So Gabe, I don't know if you want to add to that, but we're just starting.
I think to add to that is, no, you're absolutely right. Firstly, everything you said is 100%, but I would even take it a step further. And instead of the companies are buying, right? And you said you're a huge range, huge industry, huge budget. Work backwards is like who's buying, right? Who within the company is buying? What's the actual persona? I mean, I know we're all about ICP, but let's focus on, okay, who are the titles? Who are the people that are actually buying this product and taking these meetings and entertaining these conversations? And then you could work from there backwards, because that's an easy answer, I'm assuming. And then you can work a little bit backwards using, SalesIntel.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times the persona is a clue for what detail around the company makes sense. Certain titles, certain responsibilities lead you back to, okay, there's a certain profile in the company and or the technology footprint that is why that person has this pain. And that's, I think attacking it from all those angles, you make sense. It's not to ignore the persona. I totally didn't mean to do that. So it was a good call out. Love that question though. Yeah. And it's the single biggest thing we talk about when we sign up a new customer.
Awesome. We have a comment in the chat saying the only thing to add to those factors are different. Those factors are different for different businesses and businesses models in markets, of course. So we have some participation from the audience.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just see one more question coming. Let me see. Jeff is asking, in a down economy, how much is it a waiting game for things to shift versus doubling down on the ideas you've shared today?
I have some thoughts, but Gabe, I'll let you take this one first if you have some thoughts. I do have some thoughts.
I'm about doubling down. I mean, right now in a down economy, the thing you need to do, in my opinion, is to work smarter and work harder, and not to wait. There are, again, going back granularly, like you have to look specifically, what are the things that we can do now as a company to sell in a down economy, and just focus all of your attention on that and invest in it big time. That's what we're doing as a company, and we're scaling like hell right now, and it's going really well. But there's some business that we lost. Yeah, 100%. Working with companies that I would say specifically that had big SDR teams. We lost a lot of that type of business because they also, usually companies close their vendor relationships before they turn off their employees. And we got hit by that. But on the flip side, those companies then came back to us because once they realized they had to lay off their employees, they still needed meetings set. And then they came back to us. So we doubled down on building and creating and mending those relationships and keeping those relationships strong, even though they weren't clients of ours. And then now they are again, and even bigger than before. So that's how we did it as a company recently.
Yeah, I think speaking from experience, right? Because it's very competitive right now. The economy's tough. It isn't about when doubling down doesn't. I don't think this was the intent of the question, but it could be interpreted this way. Doubling down doesn't mean doubling your resource or doubling your money. The other way to double down, which is how we did it at SalesIntel, is focused all on the efficiency of what we were doing. So we actually zeroed in. We did that focus effort. So the same dollar, the same effort is now producing, in the case of my marketing team, 3 times the value. So doubling down can be about getting more focused, actually. And I think that's whether it's through the ICP definition or whether it's through using intent data, right, to get to that harvest demand versus, building brand versus harvesting demand concept we talked about, which is really important. I do think you've got to double down on some dimension or another. If you're financially able, it's a great time to take share and take business in some cases. If you're trying to manage your finances tightly. It's about doubling your focus. So hopefully that's helpful. It was another great question. So I don't know if there's anything else, Eduardo. We can sign off. If not, that I
We have
certainly will always. Yeah.
We have a question from Nick. He's saying he's a SalesIntel customer and he wants to learn a little bit more about Alleyoop. However, I'm going to ask Gabriel to take this question via email. I'm going to share
Give me a
information
call.
with the team. Because we are running out of time, I want to say thank you, Gabriel and James, for joining us today and for all the knowledge you dropped on us. I want to say thank you to our audience for participating. Audience, you are the best part of MSP. I love having you here. And finally, I want to say thank you to our partner, SalesIntel. They are sponsoring this event today, and there's a button, a magic button at the top of this page that where you can request a button from their team, and they will get in touch with you later today. Other than that, audience, I will send you a follow-up email with the recording, all the key takeaways, and the resources that James put in the slide, in the final slide. You will have access to all of that later today. And while the speakers and I hang out backstage, the Modern Sales Pros team will make sure the audience is up, the recording, sorry, it's up on our website too, so your audience can have all this knowledge back again. Speakers, we can go backstage. We can say bye to our audience. People are saying thank you in the chat. They really liked it. So let's go. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Eduardo. Gabe, I'll see you backstage, and thank you. Awesome session again. We'll see you in a month. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.